Good day from the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside of Moscow. Welcome to our coverage of the arrival of 3 new residents to the International Space Station. You're looking at a view from a balcony camera overlooking the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Korolyov, where a huge crowd of NASA, European Space Agency, and Russian Federal Space Agency officials, family and guests and VIPs are on hand to watch the arrival a short time from now of the 3 new residents who will board the International Space Station a bit later this morning. That trio consisting of Oleg Novitskiy, the Soyuz commander who is strapped into the center seat of the Soyuz MS-03 vehicle. To his left, the board engineer number 1 from the European Space Agency, Thomas Pesquet, and to Novitskiy's right, NASA flight engineer Peggy Whitson, who is about to arrive for her 3rd long-duration mission aboard the International Space Station in what should be ultimately a record-breaking tour for Whitson on board the International Outpost. The 3 crew members will be joining later this morning the 3 current residents on board the International Space Station: NASA Commander Shane Kimbrough, his Russian colleagues Sergei Ryzhikov and Andrei Borisenko, who arrived aboard the International Space Station just a month ago on October 21st aboard the Soyuz MS-02 vehicle, which is docked to the space-facing port of the Russian segment of the International Space Station, the Poisk module. The destination for Whitson, Novitskiy, and Pesquet is the Earth-facing port on the Russian segment of the International Space Station, that being the Rosviet module that is attached to the Zarya module of the International Space Station, which was launched 18 years ago this morning, Moscow time, on November 20th, 1998. So an anniversary being celebrated with the arrival of 3 new residents to the International Space Station that will bring Expedition 50 to a full complement of 3 crew members.
Video, but also with some interference. Not stable. Yeah.
At this hour, the International Space Station is flying 251 statute miles above the Earth, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator, flying over the Pacific Ocean. Soon, the complex will be making a swing across the southern Atlantic Ocean, where docking is expected to occur within the hour. The docking time is scheduled at 4:02 p.m. Central Time, 1:02 a.m. Moscow time, if everything goes as planned. So far, so good. The Corps' automated rendezvous system on the Soyuz MS-03 vehicle, as well as the corresponding hardware on the service module, the Zvezda service module of the International Space Station, those 2 systems have locked on to one another as we continue a steady approach and a pinpoint approach by the Soyuz vehicle for an on-time docking to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station.
Дальность 9,5, скорость минус 14,8, есть единица захвата.
Just 2 days ago, from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the temperatures were frigid, but the spirits were warm as engine ignition occurred on the Soyuz MS-03 vehicle, at liftoff occurring at 2:20 p.m. Central Time on Thursday, which was 2:20 a.m. Baikonur time in the wee hours of Friday morning on the central steppe of Kazakhstan. An 8-minute, 45-second ascent for the Soyuz booster and its Soyuz spacecraft. Everything went by the book with 3rd stage shutdown and spacecraft separation, followed a few seconds later by the deployment of the navigational antennas and the solar arrays on the Soyuz MS-03 to begin an automated approach and all of the engine firings in this rendezvous that have brought the Soyuz virtually now into the neighborhood of the International Space Station. Again, docking is scheduled at 4:02 p.m. Central Time this afternoon within the hour. The Soyuz will arrive at what is known as a ballistic targeting point about 11 minutes from now at the bottom of the hour. After that, it will begin a fly-around of the International Space Station at a fly-around angle of just 56 degrees to precisely point the docking probe, which has been extended at the forward end of the Soyuz's orbital module, the upper stage, if you will, of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle for a short period of station keeping to allow flight controllers here in the Russian Mission Control Center to precisely calculate and assess the alignment of the Soyuz and its docking probe to the Rosviet module before the command is given to begin the final approach for contact and capture, which again should occur at 4:02 p.m. Central Time, 5:02 p.m. Eastern Time, just after 1 a.m. here in Moscow on a Sunday morning.
Repeat, please.
Камеры GoPro включили вовремя, подтвердите. Подтверждаем, камеры включены вовремя. Хорошо, я понял.
Half a world away at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, at the International Space Station Flight Control Room, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers has taken its place on console. They are watching over all of the systems of the International Space Station. Today on console, leading this flight control team is Flight Director Tony Sakachi, second from your right, joined on console by former astronaut and now Flight Director T.J. Creamer. Also, just at the top of your screen, a pair of astronauts, Jessica Meir, second from the top of your screen, who will be talking to Shane Kimbrough and his crewmates aboard the International Space Station in the terminal phase of this rendezvous. At the very top of your screen, veteran astronaut and now a member of the commercial crew cadre, Sunny Williams, who is sitting on console as a Soyuz systems expert, should her expertise be required during the course of the final phase of today's rendezvous for docking.
Принято. Дальность 6300, скорость минус 10.
While the Soyuz is in the terminal phase of its approach for docking to the International Space Station, other space news being made down at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida, where an Atlas V rocket on a cloudless day stands poised for launch at 5:42 p.m. Eastern Time to carry the Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite R-Series, or the GOES-R satellite, into orbit. The first in a cadre of next generation of geostationary weather satellites that will significantly improve the detection and observation of environmental phenomena that directly affect public safety, protection of property, and the nation's economic health and prosperity. The launch coverage for the GOES-R satellite will begin first on the NASA TV media channel at 4:45 p.m. Eastern Time. Once we complete our docking coverage, then that will be joined and co-anchored both on the public and media channels of NASA television.
Получаем хорошее телевизионное изображение, видим станцию в центре. Мы тоже наблюдаем по ВСК и новинку. Дальность 5300, скорость минус 9,1. Есть единица, есть захват.
The Soyuz MS-03 vehicle is less than 5.5 kilometers away from its destination for docking to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station, currently closing at a rate of about 9 meters per second. Everything continues to go normally. for this very precision-like approach by the Soyuz. You're looking at a view from an external camera on the Soyuz vehicle as it captures its view of the International Space Station. In the lower left-hand corner of this engineering overlay, you see the distance and the rate of closure, now just under 5 kilometers away from contact and capture to the International Space Station.
Есть одновременное включение ДПО?
Да, наблюдаем.
Дальность 4400. Скорость минус 8,6, есть единица, есть захват.
Принято.
If everything goes as planned, with docking scheduled within the hour at 4:02 p.m. Central Time, 1:02 a.m. Moscow time, the post-docking scenario would call for the relative motion of the Soyuz vehicle and the International Space Station to dampen out so that the force of contact, if you will, of the Soyuz against the docking mechanism on the Rossbyet vehicle would enable a relative motion of about 0 between the two vehicles before the docking probe begins to retract on the Soyuz to pull the two docking interfaces flush against one another and enable hooks to close to form a hard mate between the Soyuz and the Rossbyet module of the International Space Station. That will commence about a 2.5-hour period of leak checks and other systems checks on both sides of the docking interface, the pressurization of the small passageway between the Soyuz and the Rossbyet module that will lead to the ops between the two vehicles that is scheduled at about 3:35 a.m. Moscow time or 6:35 p.m. Houston time, 2.5 hours after docking.
Дальность 3400, скорость минус 8,4. Дальность 300, скорость 8,5, знак минус.
Принято.
Идем выше трубки.
Я вас понял. Сейчас процесс должен нормализоваться.
Everything should normalize now.
Плохо слышно.
We can hardly read you.
Я говорю, пока все идет нормально, процесс
I'm
должен
saying
нормализоваться.
everything is
Сейчас возьмем
going
трубку.
nominally. And everything should become as
Есть
expected.
небольшие скачки
We do have
в дальности по
some jumps in the range.
Дальность 2,8,
On course.
скорость минус 8,3. Есть единица, есть захват.
We have range 2.8 and range rate minus 8.3. We have acquisition.
Дальность 20.
Range is 2.5 and range rate is 8.
Принято.
We copy.
This is Mission Control Korolyov, just 32 minutes away from the anticipated docking of the Soyuz MS-03 to the Rassvet module of the International Space Station. Everything proceeding on track as the International Space Station with the Soyuz in pursuit flies 251 statute miles over the South Pacific in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Everything continuing to proceed on track. The Soyuz currently executing a series of what are known as impulse burns, small thruster firings to precisely fine-tune the Soyuz's path to the International Space Station. You're currently looking at the view from the Soyuz external camera. Aboard the Soyuz, again in the center seat, flying under the call sign of Kazbek, is veteran Russian cosmonaut Oleg Novitskiy. To his left, European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet. And to Novitskiy's right is veteran NASA flight engineer Peggy Whitson, who will surpass a variety of records during her stay on board the station, including the all-time record for most days in space by an American astronaut, that currently held by Jeff Williams, recently set. She will break Williams' record for most days in space by a U.S. astronaut on April 24th.
5:59. We copy. We see that the station is at the center of the VSK and on the video camera and the image.
The International Space Station growing ever larger in the field of view, with the Soyuz now just 1.6 kilometers away, closing at a rate of 4 meters per second. At the time of the final approach and contact and capture, the Soyuz will be traveling at a glacial rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second for contact and capture to minimize the rates imposed on the International Space Station at the point of docking. We, of course, will be reporting everything through the closure of the hooks to make sure that everything is in place for a hard mate between the Soyuz and the Rassvet module that will set the stage for a couple of hours of leak checks and vestibule pressurization preceding the opening of the hatch that will enable Novitskiy, Pesquet, and Whitson to board the International Space Station to join the current Expedition 50 trio of Station Commander Shane Kimbrough and his two Russian cosmonaut colleagues, Sergei Ryzhikov and Andrei Borisenko. This will complete 2 launches and a Soyuz landing within a 4-week period, very impressive by anybody's yardstick, as the station goes back to a 6-person crew for the next several months.
Ожидали мы такой процесс.
It
Все должно идти нормально.
didn't come as a surprise, so everything should be going fine.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder if you guys could tell me where the red camera battery charger is located. Oh.
Station is talking on space ground 2. Range is 1,200 and
Включить.
range rate is 3.8.
Без пересветки
If
можете
it's better for you to work with no AGC, then you can deactivate it. We actually adjusted it, and for now it's the best option. Copy.
Дальность 1200.
1,200 is the range,
So we will
and range rate is minus,
Идем выше трубки.
and we are slightly above the corridor.
принято.
Copy.
Ожидаем коррекцию скорости сближения.
We see we are standing by for the depot thrusters range rate adjustment. We copy.
Дальность 1000, скорость
1000 is the range. Range rate is 3.6.
Есть работа ДПО.
We confirm depot thrust activation.
Принято.
Copy.
Есть падение скорости.
We confirm that the retrograde burn has been successful. We're decelerating. Range is 900 and range rate is decreasing. It's 2.5.
Скорость
Copy.
2,8.
Minus 2.8 is the range rate.
All of the Soyuz thruster firings, so-called impulse burns, continue to be executed flawlessly per the timeline. This is all an automated approach by the Soyuz, which will begin a 56-degree fly-around of the International Space Station about 5 minutes from now to precisely align the forward docking probe of the Soyuz craft with the Earth-facing Rosviet module's docking port.
Station is performing the yaw maneuver, is moving in the yaw to the left and to the right. We see the movement to the left and to the right. Kazbek.
Дальность 8.
Range is 800 and range rate is 2.3 meters per second.
Есть обобщенное
We
ГСО.
confirm combined gas. So
Есть включение ДПО.
we confirm thrust activation.
Дальность 700.
Range is 740 and range rate is 2.3 meters per second.
This view now of the Soyuz MS-03 closing ever so steadily for its docking to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station, now just 700 meters away, soon to begin its fly around of the International Space Station, closing at a rate of 2.2 meters per second. All of the Soyuz systems in excellent shape, everything tripping along nicely on the timeline that will lead to an expected docking to the Rosviet module at 4:02 p.m. Central Time, 1:02 a.m. Moscow time.
Есть включение
We
ДПО.
confirm activation of the depot
Мы
thrusters.
находимся в трубке, все нормально.
Copy. We are within the corridor, so everything is nominal.
Дальность
Range is 590 and minus 1.5 meters per second is the range rate.
Принято.
We copy.
Ждем выход на
We
ближний
are
час.
standing by till the final approach part.
ожидаем.
We are standing by.
Дальность
The
500.
range is 560.
минус
The range
11.
rate is 1.4 meters per second.
Once again, you're looking at the Soyuz MS-03, which just 2 days ago lifted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on a pre-planned 34-orbit 2-day rendezvous to the International Space Station. All of the approach burns and engine firings pre-programmed into the Soyuz computer have been executed flawlessly, no issues, as the International Space Station and the Soyuz fly over the South Pacific, about to begin a southwest to northeasterly track that will carry it across the coast of Chile a short time from now. We are just about 22 minutes away from docking, and we'll begin the fly around of the International Space Station about a minute or so from now.
0.4 for range. Range is 450, and the range rate is -1 meters per second.
Принято.
We copy.
Дальность 412.
Range is 412, and range rate is 0.9
Понял вас.
with a minus, and we copy.
Есть разворот.
We confirm the
Участок.
roll maneuver.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. The fly-around of the International Space Station by the Soyuz MS-03 has begun. Once again, you're looking at the vehicle with Oleg Novitskiy strapped into the center seat of the descent module, the center section of the three-section Soyuz spacecraft. To his left is board engineer number 1, Thomas Pesquet of the European Space Agency. To his right, Peggy Whitson, the veteran NASA flight engineer, soon to be a record breaker, as she begins her third long-duration stay on board the International Space Station. All of the Soyuz systems continue to function flawlessly, as the Soyuz is now at a distance of just 340 meters. We're closing at a rate of 0.8 of a meter per second. Once this short fly-around ends in about 2.5 to 3 minutes, we will have a period of station keeping, just a few minutes where the brakes will be put on. The Soyuz will be stationary as a final assessment of the alignment of the forward docking probe begins by Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov before final approach commanding is issued to the Soyuz to begin its closure of the final several hundred feet prior to contact and capture.
Наблюдаем.
We see that. We just see the service module now.
Возвращение узла в центр.
Let's wait for the docking
СМ.
node
Диаметр
coming back,
Дальность 230.
and the range is 230,
По
Принято.
курсу 390.
and
290.
I think it's 290
Понял.
or 390. 290.
Контролирует соответствие
Continue monitoring the
дальности откуда.
sizes on the monitor.
Судя по углам пилинга, облет
And, well, based on the
проходит успешно, потихонечку выходим на ось
data
угла.
that we are receiving, you're continuing with the fly around and everything is looking good.
Дальность по курсу
Range per course is 280,
Station Houston First
Принято.
Shane on space to ground.
copy, and range is minus 45.
What did Jessica go ahead?
Okay, Access Shane, I'll just raise you on 3.
Наблюдает такой.
We see the docking port.
260 meters away, closing at a rate of less than 0.5 meter per second. The Soyuz about to wrap up its fly-around and begin a short period of station keeping. Everything continues to proceed on track with docking scheduled at 4:02 p.m. Central Time, 1:02 a.m. Moscow time. All of the Soyuz systems continue to function perfectly for Oleg Novitskiy, Peggy Whitson, and Thomas Pesquet.
Диаметр СМ.
SM diameter is a little bit more than
And as we continue our coverage of the Soyuz docking here on the public channel of NASA television, we're about to switch the media channel over to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida for coverage of the launch of the Atlas V rocket and the GOES-R environmental satellite. We will continue here on the public channel, however, with our coverage of Soyuz and its arrival at the International Space Station.
data is 230. Copy.
Принято, подтверждаем.
We copy and confirm.
Мы не получаем
We are
телевизионные
not getting any
изображения,
video
подробный
image.
репортаж.
Guys, please report in detail what you're seeing on your side.
Soyuz currently executing a pre-planned roll maneuver that will precisely align its solar arrays in the correct configuration and orientation for its final approach for contact and capture to the Rassvet module.
You read us. We do not have any comm on our side, and we do not have any image. We copy you loud and clear. How's? Kazbek, we're not getting any video image. Please report. Copy. We continue with the roll maneuver. We are on the axis of the docking port. Range per course data is 213. And visually, that's what it is. What about angular rates? They're fine. It was pretty shaky before. Okay, let's wait for the station keeping and then for the final approach. Please confirm that K-15, the K-15 command illuminated, that retreat is not illuminated. It is not. Copy. Great. And we're seeing the image now, Kazbek. Perfect. You have a go to send on the input 1 control panel. You can send the final approach command. Copy. In work. All right. Please press.
Having completed its fly around of the International Space Station and now station keeping at a distance of 200 meters away, we are about to receive the final command for the terminal approach of the Soyuz to the International Space Station. A good view of that Soyuz vehicle from external cameras on the International Space Station. The station and the Soyuz currently flying along the east coast of South America, from southwest to northeast, currently over Argentina, about to cross the border to Uruguay.
You're still not at the 40-meter mark. All right, we are sending the final approach command. The command went through successfully. Copy. We see the depot thrust activation and the change in the range rate.
Через 7 минут ожидается вход в тень.
And you will hit the sunset in about 7 minutes. Copy. In about 7 minutes, we will be in the sunset. GSO 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have LSK message on our monitor. We copy. That's good news. Range is 68 per course data. And range is...
Launched in a Delta rocket October 16th, 1975. NASA turns to the engineers and analysts in its launch services program to send robotic spacecraft on their way for some of the most exciting and notable missions in the agency's history. The Launch Services Program, which is known as LSP, is based at NASA's Kennedy Space Center here in Florida and has a roster of engineers and technicians who specialize in all aspects of rocketry and spacecraft integration. LSP selects the appropriate launcher for a mission spacecraft, in this case, the United Launch Alliance Atlas V for NOAA's GOES-R. The selection process takes place years before the first launch opportunity. The program then provides oversight as the designs of the rocket and spacecraft are integrated with each other. And as liftoff nears, teams oversee the launch vehicle's engineering and manufacture and its integration with the spacecraft. LSP conducts the countdowns for NASA's missions here and provides additional quality assurance along with other controls to ensure a successful mission. LSP managers are here right next door to us in the Mission Director Center overseeing today's activities. Our NASA LSP Launch Mission Manager today is Omar Baez, seated in the center of the screen. GOES-R will be boosted to space atop the United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket in the 541 configuration. One of the most powerful rockets in the Atlas V fleet, the 541 configuration with 4 Block C solid rocket boosters provides the optimum performance to precisely deliver GOES-R to its desired place in space. In addition to completing 2 national security missions, an Atlas V 541 configuration rocket launched NASA's Curiosity rover on its 10-month, 354 million-mile journey to the surface of Mars. Today will be the 67th Atlas V launch and the 113th United Launch Alliance launch. The launch team here in the Atlas Spacecraft Operations Center, comprised of managers from NOAA, NASA, and United Launch Alliance, has been on console since about 1 o'clock this afternoon. Operations began about an hour ago to fill the Atlas booster and Centaur upper stage with liquid oxygen. The tanks will reach flight level at about T-minus 5 minutes. Liquid hydrogen is loaded into the Centaur tank, while the Atlas was fueled with RP-1, a rocket-grade kerosene, on Friday afternoon. All fueling operations are proceeding normally. They got started a little bit late as the teams worked through a couple of minor issues, and the offset from that is that our hold that occurs at the T-minus 4 minute mark, normally a planned 15-minute hold, now will be a 6-minute hold, as launch managers borrowed 9 minutes from the T-minus 4 minute hold and added it to the hold that was in place prior to the start of fueling. So we'll enter that hold at 5:32 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 minutes away from launch. Again, everything is proceeding normally. Weather is 100% go, and we're at T-minus 43 minutes, 28 seconds, and counting. This is Atlas Launch Control.
T-minus 43 minutes.
And LC fuel 2.
Go ahead.
Top 50, step 5, 90, Centaur LH2 at 96.2%. Topping started.
Roger. Perform Centaur fill and drain valve, SRV, and LH2 SVV cycling test.
Roger.
Both the International Space Station and the Soyuz fly in tandem at a speed of 5 miles per second over Rio de Janeiro.
By 1 degree from the crosshairs. We copy.
Линейку Дэн себя выбери.
Could you select the ruler here?
Мишень ниже 1 градус.
The target is lower by 1 degree. The crosshairs are almost aligned.
Принято.
We copy.
Дальность 25 метров.
Range is 25 meters.
Понял вас.
Copy.
Мишень практически в центре.
The target is almost in the center and the crosshairs are aligned.
Принято.
We copy.
Дальности 30
We are approaching the 30-meter mark.
Есть готовность СВП, инструкция.
And we confirm we got the message that the SS-VP mechanism is primed. We see that. And range is 20, and the target is in the center. Range, the crosshairs are aligned. Are you getting the image, Moscow? We are.
Стыковочный узел подходит к 4 клеткам, да.
Docking port
14.
is at 4 squares mark. The range is 14, and the roll date is as it should be. Coincides.
This is Mission Control Koryov. The Soyuz now less than 20 meters away. One final maneuver to fine-tune its alignment to the Rosviet module's docking target, closing at a rate of 1/10 of a meter per second. We are standing by now for contact and capture of the International Space Station.
У нас затеняется мишень контроля. Продолжайте репортаж.
Target is too dark for us, so please continue running commentary. Copy. The target is lower by 1 degree with a slight roll to the left by about 2 degrees. The target is 1.5 squares and the range is 10 meters. That's H2O. And target is 1 square down. The crosshairs are aligned. Copy. The crosshairs are aligned. The target is 0.5 degree down, and the range is 3.5 meters. We copy. Oleg, range is 3. So what do you see on the periscope, VSK? What do you see? The image is stable. Copy. The target is in the center, the crosshairs are aligned, and we are in the final approach. 3.5 squares. We see the target, 4 squares. We confirm mechanical.
Contact confirmed and capture confirmed. The Soyuz MS-03 has arrived at the International Space Station, docking occurring at 3:58 p.m. Central Time, 3:58 p.m. Central Time, 4:58 p.m. Eastern Time. On the 18th anniversary of the launch of the first module of the International Space Station, Expedition 50 has a full complement of crew members. Docking occurring 251 miles above the northeast coast of Brazil. Once again, docking occurring at 3:58 p.m. Central Time, 4:58 p.m. Eastern Time.
Stand by 1. Okay, on the SS-VP display, that's what we're seeing. All right, we'll be monitoring the SS-VP docking mechanism operation. 003855. Okay, copy for capture. 003855. The KDU parameters are nominal. All right, at 145.
This is Mission Control Koryov. Once again, docking was flawless every step of the way from the launch pad of the Baikonur Cosmodrome 2 days ago to the Soyuz's arrival moments ago, with docking occurring at 3:58 p.m. Central Time, 4:58 p.m. Eastern Time, as the Soyuz and the International Space Station flew 251 statute miles over the northeast coast of Brazil. We're now waiting for relative motion between the two vehicles to dampen out. The docking probe on the Soyuz will begin to retract to initiate the closing of the hooks and a hard mate between the two vehicles. We'll stand by for that call.
Олег, выдайте, пожалуйста, Г4. Надо выключать нам передатчик.
Что выдать?
Г4. Отключение дисплея трансляции.
Г4 принял.
Station Moscow on space to ground 1 for Andre.
Г4 выдано.
Ну тогда работаем по 81-й страничке.
Station Moscow on space to ground 1 for Andre. Regarding MPEG recording termination.
Otherwise, the blue screen will bother you.
Москве, Кэшбэк 2, перезамер, герметичная соцсеть. Время 01:02, давление ВСА 854, давление ВГО 835, давление ВГО. The crew aboard the Soyuz MS-03, Oleg Novitskiy, Thomas Pesquet, and Peggy Whitson, in the process of deactivating some of the Soyuz systems that were used during the terminal phase of the rendezvous as we stand by for the retraction of the docking probe and the closing of the hooks that will form a hard mate between Soyuz and the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station, to which the Soyuz arrived just a few minutes ago, with docking occurring at 3:58 p.m. Central Time, 4:58 p.m. Eastern Time.
Go ahead. Andre, you can close the application, terminate recording, and downlink the file for us.
With the video preparation, please.
Okay, and work?
Downlink it to us via OTA.
Фара выключена. Как приняли?
We deactivated the
Я
floodlight.
вас понял.
Copy.
Как проходит режим стягивания? Крюки закрыты?
Station Moscow, space to ground 14. Sergey, regarding moving MRM-1 Soyuz PEV to electrical control mode.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. We can confirm now that the Soyuz hooks are closed at the docking port of the Rassvet module. That hook closure occurring at 4:04 p.m. Central Time, just 6 minutes after the Soyuz docking to the Rassvet module. So we have a hard mate now between the Soyuz and the International Space Station that will set the stage for a couple of hours of leak checks to make sure we have an airtight seal at the docking interface, followed by the pressurization of the vestibule or passageway between the Soyuz and the Rassvet module itself. That will be the precursor to the opening of the hatches between the two vehicles.
Space to ground 1 for Sergey, regarding switching MRM-1 Soyuz PEV to electrical control position.
Так, есть загорание Г-17, защелки втянуты.
Понял вас. Ждем втягивания штанги. Загорание.
This is entry on space to ground 1. Yes, go ahead.
Да.
All right, so we got 4 files.
Yes, concur.
And the total size of the 4 files is 1.29 gigabytes. Copy. Thank you for that information. And I was trying to get a hold of Sergey regarding the MRM-1 Soyuz PEV valve transition.
Service module probe retracted.
Okay, I'll hand over the headset to him.
Go to deactivate.
How would you like me to call the folder with the video files that we recorded during final approach and docking? You can call it TK-733 and Moscow Station on space to ground 1. This is Sergey. Go ahead. Yeah, we'd like you to move MRM-1 Soyuz PEV to electrical control position. Copy. And for the final approach and docking timeline, everything was nominal, and I was looking at all the times, and all the times matched the predicts. Thank you. That sounds great, Sergey.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. Just to recap, a flawless approach and docking by the Soyuz MS-03 spacecraft with Oleg Novitskiy, Peggy Whitson, and Thomas Pesquet on board, wrapping up a textbook 2-day rendezvous after the launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan in the afternoon hours U.S. time on Thursday, the early morning hours on Friday at the Central Asian launch site. Novitskiy, Pesquet, and Whitson arriving just a few minutes ago, with docking occurring at 3:58 p.m. Central Time, 4:58 p.m. Eastern Time. Just 6 minutes later, hooks closed between the Soyuz and the Rassvet module of the International Space Station that was the docking port for the Soyuz spacecraft. So we have a hard mate now We will be switching the public channel of NASA television now to the Kennedy Space Center for launch coverage from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station of the Atlas V rocket and the GOES-R environmental and weather satellite atop the Atlas V. That launch scheduled at 5:42 p.m. Eastern Time. On the media channel of NASA TV, we will continue our coverage with a post-docking news conference that will feature NASA Administrator Charles Bolden and the head of the Russian Federal Space Agency, Igor Komarov, who will be offering their thoughts on today's docking of the latest trio of residents to the International Space Station. Again, we will stay on the media channel for this post-docking news conference that will be coming up shortly. The public channel now going over to the Kennedy Space Center for coverage of the Atlas V launch and the GOES-R environmental satellite. For now, this is Mission Control Korolev.
Thank you, Rob. We're back live at the Atlas Space Flight Operations Center on
Roger.